Alright guys, so in this session we are going to talk about quantitative and qualitative methods in sociology. So we have discussed about the initial sociologist and their attempt to make sociology on the line similar to natural sciences and the efforts that they have done for that, right? But there were a lot of criticisms, and in that context we discussed and completed one topic, that is whether sociology is a science or not. In that context itself, we have discussed many information related to these approaches. In science, what we use, and in social science, what we use, and what are the limitations of using quantitative methods in sociology. In fact, all these we discussed there. And when we went on to the discussion on positivism, there also we talked a lot about quantitative methods. And then in non-positivism, we discussed a lot of qualitative methods, right? So we have done a lot of discussions so far about this, and now what we are going to do is formally we are going to consolidate everything what we have discussed so far about this method, and we will get into this method as such, and I'm going to prepare an answer for that. Okay, so I'll give you the flowchart, and I'll be giving you the PDF and everything. You can download it by using the link which is given below, free of cost. In case if you want the complete sociology course, you can get again with the link in the description, and one-to-one mentorship and test series extra that you can separately get in touch with me in case if you're interested. So let's start with this topic, that is quantitative and qualitative methods. See guys, in simple terms, if you see initial sociologists, they directly use quantitative methods in sociology because they want to make it similar to natural science. So quantitative method is something which are dealing in numbers, right? Now what was the objective here? When you're dealing in numbers, you try to quantify things so you can ensure objectivity, and one of the most important pillars of science. So if you want to call or consider a body of knowledge as scientific, it must be objective. And how can you ensure objectivity without any personal bias? How can you achieve that when you're dealing with quantifiable data or numbers? But when it comes to qualitative methods, these are dealing in text, not in terms of numbers. So here the numbers, here text, a detailed description. So that is what you have seen in non-positivism, right? So here, if you remember positivism, objective understanding of objective reality. So you are studying objectively, and what you are studying is also objective, and try to quantify things, especially in terms of numbers as much as possible. Okay, so we'll get into the methods that we use and everything in both of these cases. So initial sociologist approach was that. Later there were questions arise, there were criticisms whether sociology can be studied by using the methods which is used in natural science, right? Because human beings have consciousness. Can it be quantified? Can it be measured in terms of numbers? No, right? Consciousness you cannot measure in terms of numbers. See, if you boil water at 100 degrees Celsius, you know what is going to happen. If you freeze it at 0 degrees Celsius, you know what is going to happen. But that cannot be done in case of social world or human beings. So that's the main concern and questions, and then that led to the debate whether sociology is a science or not. And then slowly it is understood that qualitative methods is better for understanding society, and later we have seen the integrated approach, right? Quantitative plus qualitative, positivism plus non-positivism, micro macro. So the integrated approach is what we have seen later. So that way we will be taking up. So guys, this PDF and everything is given to you free of cost, so you can read this. This is how you will be writing an introduction. Maybe the intro I can just read it out. Since the emergence of sociology as a distinct discipline that led to debate about the scope and methodology, and this discussion was closely tied to the initial debate of the nature of sociology itself. So two main approaches: positivism, non-positivism, or quantitative and qualitative. Okay, so this have emerged, and now let's get into the actual topic. So here, when we discuss about quantitative methods, what are the different steps? This is what, forget about this part. This is just the explanation which is given for your understanding. So maybe I just want to discuss here. Everything is discussed in detail in the course. So since it is a revision session, I'll be focusing on the most important part, as we can complete the discussion in 20 to 25 minutes. Okay. So the detailed 1.5 hour discussion, 1 hour discussion is there. So that is the actual class. So if you see here, first step regarding the methods. Quantitative means first you collect data, So that is the most important step. What kind of data you collect? When you collect the data mostly in terms of quantifiable data, something which can be quantified, okay? So in terms of numbers as much as possible. So what kind of methods that you need to use for that? Interviews can be used, yes or no questions, questionnaires can be used, like that, okay? And then what is the next step? The analysis, that means the interpretation of data. And for that again, statistical techniques including tables, graphs, curves, etc. can be used here. That's similar to like what you do in case of physics or chemistry, right? The graphs and everything, which you do in science. So here, surveys, interviews, questionnaires, schedule, all these can be used to get the quantifiable data, then interpretation, and from that there will be theory building, and which is again based on cause and effect. So whenever you talk about theory, it is about generalization that can be applied across. That means which lead to establishment of cause and effect. If there is an effect, there must be a cause. Establish that, and that should be generalized, that should be universally applicable. That's why you're dealing in numbers, okay? So cause and effect relationship using inductive methods, we discussed that already. And final testing is also done using the data, okay, in terms of numbers. So that's about, that's what I have mentioned here that you can read from the PDF itself. So these are the 4 steps. Now, what are the advantages? Again, I'll just read the headings and I'll explain that. So objectivity. What is a precondition for any body of knowledge to be considered as scientific? It must be objective. Objective means freedom from personal biases. How can you achieve freedom from personal biases? The best way to get that is when you're dealing in numbers. Numbers won't lie. Numbers won't influence the personal or get influenced by the personal biases. It won't change. And if you're dealing in numbers, you actually don't want to go and investigate or collect data. Even whether you go, your X-assistant go, Y-assistant go, female assistant go, male assistant go, Hindu assistant go, Muslim assistant go, North Indian go, South Indian go, it doesn't matter, you get the same number. So there is no chance that the data will be manipulated. Okay, so that means you can ensure objectivity when you're dealing in numbers. So that's the first and the most important advantage when you talk about the quantitative methods. Okay, so quantitative methods are considered objective and generalizations are based on facts. So that provide a scientific approach. Reliability and validity. Okay, so it is easy to check the reliability and validity of the results generated through quantitative methods. The result can be regenerated, means replicated. Okay, in the similar conditions, the same result can be replicated. Ease of measurement. I told you, anyone can go, expert is not required. Anyone can go and collect. Even you put a survey in the internet, you can collect huge data also. That's another advantage. Huge data you can get. Okay, qualitative means you need to go talk to people, expert is required, a lot of effort is there, description need to be taken, right? But this is not the case. You just post something in the Facebook also, you'll get a lot of responses, and that you can consider as the data that you collected. Okay, wide application, that's exactly what I've mentioned now. So it can be applicable to the huge population. That means it can be generalized in a better way. So these are the advantages. So what we discussed so far is what is quantitative, what is qualitative, dealing in numbers, dealing in text, the steps in quantitative approach, advantages of quantitative approach. Very simple. Now limitations, there are certain phenomena which are non-measurable, right? Sociology is dealing with what? Sociology is dealing with human beings, and ultimately you are dealing with human beings, emotions, sentiments, motives, etc. Is that measurable attributes? So there are so many measurable attributes, or in fact most of it are actually non-measurable attributes. Okay, so that's actually the difficulty that the sociologist or the researcher face when it comes to sociology in the application of quantitative methods. Now data limitation, challenges with secondary data. There will be issue with the secondary data accuracy and historical phenomena related data may not be correct. Secondary data that you rely on, that also may not be correct. Sometimes the primary data also won't be correct. Secondary data reliability is again in question. Partial reality. Why? Because you are taking only one-sided view. So risk of generating incomplete understanding of complex social issues, as you are not considering the meanings, motives, emotions, etc. of the individual. Okay, now what is qualitative methods? You can read this. So Basically, qualitative methods means it could be generated through observation, and it can be participant observation, non-participant observation. When it comes to participant observation, again, that is one of the most important methods which is actually used, especially by anthropologists. You want to study a society or a culture, you go to that society, you get yourself immersed into that society. With that, you are not only understanding what they do, you also understand why they do it and how culture is shaped and how they do it. So everything can be understood. But in terms of quantitative approach, you may understand what they do, but it is very difficult to understand why they do certain things. It could have been evolved over a period of time. It's not culture is, came in one day or 2 days. It might have evolved over a period of time. There are biological aspects, there are even environmental aspects, and all these things will be there for a particular culture. So there are certain rituals which might be performed. It's not only about what they do, it is also about why they do. So this kind of understanding will give you a holistic approach. Okay. So for example, observation, direct study of social phenomena. It could be participant and non-participant. You may participate with them and you become a part of the member of the society, and that you try to study certain rituals or culture or whatever. Or you stay away, observe and study. But again, bias will come. Okay, worst hand. We will discuss this in detail in the chapter on Weber. Okay, that is another approach. And narration, which is storytelling, interpretation. It's about analytical understanding of data. We discussed all these already in detail, so I'm just skipping that. You can write these examples in the third chapter. We discussed all those. What are the advantages? This gives you a comprehensive understanding, generate a complete picture of social reality. Okay, and then cost effective, can be economical for specific, and it is very specific, and it can give you in-depth studies, pragmatic solutions, okay, and exploratory research. So guys, these are a lot of cases I have discussed, and all these advantages, disadvantages we discussed in detail with each of these methods in chapter 3, research methods. Okay. So what are the limitations? You need an expert, whether you're going for a participant observation or even simple data collection. Method of accounts, if you remember, we discussed in non-positivism, in phenomenology or ethnomethodology. There you need an expert. It's not that in case of quantitative, you can send anyone to collect data, and that data you are getting in numbers, and you can finally interpret the data. Okay, even there also you can use the help of computer systems, etc. But here, right from data collection to the end, you need the expert. Okay, reliability concern, you cannot replicate the same result. Okay, so if someone else coming and studying will bring a different understanding. Sample size limitation, before, if you remember, I told you can collect data from across the world just with a post in the internet, but here specific, you can study and with very limited data. Generalization issue will be there, but they are not concerned about generalization or theory building. Okay, now compare it, quantitative and qualitative. See, just for simplicity, you can see in case of quantitative and qualitative, what are the type of data? You are dealing in numbers and statistics. Here you are dealing in text and description. Descriptive understanding, here quantified understanding. Sample size, here will be large, you can collect data across the world. But here, very small community from small sample size you are taking, right? So that's small. Depth of information is less because you will be getting yes or no answers. You are getting quantified information. You are doing something, you are getting in terms of numbers. For example, you are studying domestic violence. Are you facing domestic violence or not? This is what they can ask you. Why, how, who, what situation, what timing, what is the reason, all these you won't get. Only you will get to know yes or no. Based on that, you will have to make a conclusion like 60% of the female are facing this issue of domestic violence. Right? You'll ask 10 people or 100 people or 1000 people, and based on the numbers you got, you'll make the conclusion. But here, the information is more. You'll get to know why, how, what all the modes of domestic violence, okay, and in what time they will face more violence and everything. And then you will be able to bring up a more better holistic understanding. So here the information is more. Analysis approach, inferential, interpretive, method of formality, here high formality, lot of methods, here less, because it's all about understanding. Here it's generalization. They are looking for reliability, they are looking for validity, they are looking for testing and all those. So very formalized approach. Nowadays, what we do, a mix of approach based on the purpose. It's not that you are sticking to a theoretical purity, whether you are a positivist or non-positivist. That debate is over by 1940s. The quantitative qualitative debate is over. You will be focusing a mixed approach, or you will be focusing on what is the demand of your research. Based on what you want to do, you will select. Sometimes it could be combination, sometimes it could be any one of it. Sometimes you conduct the study based on qualitative approach, but to prove it or to validate it, you may collect the quantitative data. Okay, so that's how it can be done. So this is what a mixed method is, what you are using now, which is the integrated approach. Okay, so mixed method research is what we are using. We discussed this in the discussion on non-positivism. Okay, so application of mixed approach, we already covered this, so we are not discussing. Even if you have done a qualitative approach, you can do it as quantitative testing by using the numbers. Okay, so qualitative methods used to identify key themes and variables, and then testing can be done by using quantitative numbers, hypothesis formation, qualitative interpretation. Challenges again for integrating resource intensity, methodological expertise. Guys, just look into the detailed video on the discussion. Data integration, philosophical tensions. Ultimately, we need to discuss about quantitative and qualitative here. Now, future direction, advanced data analytics. This again I have covered as a separate question. I told you, if you remember, that it can be asked as a 10 marker short note. Immersive research method. Okay, AI, we discussed already about this in the Q&A session. Okay. So I think with that we have completed this discussion. Yeah, we are done with this. So guys, the PDF is there. In case if you are interested in the course, you can get that. So link is there in the description. Okay, see you guys in the next session. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.